And one. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a very late night edition of the Ignition News. We've got a lot of noise to cut through on the show tonight, so let's get right to it. Obviously, the reason you're listening is because you know that corporate news can no longer be trusted. You're looking for a safe, reliable way to get access to information. That's what we've got. And speaking of corporate America, we've got some news tonight. Corporate America is crumbling under Trump's chaos, the tariffs. Your tax dollars are flowing right to Israel for weapons. We're going to talk about that tonight. And we've got some pretty explosive revelations tonight about Trump protecting his Epstein-connected friends, surprising shifts in youth voting patterns, and, some artists have taken a stand. And then we're going to kick it off with our show on Rebel Radio. Good evening, everyone. It's a very late night, but we've got some breaking news for you to talk about here on the Ignition News. We launched the Ignition News exactly 1 week ago, and it is growing, growing, growing. We're so happy that you're here. We're so happy to be able to share unfiltered news for you in an era where the billionaires are trying to control what you listen to, what you see, and how you think. You're an independent thinker. You look up news for yourself, which is how you found the Ignition News. And we do have, by the way, a lot of interesting stories on this late night. We do live stream the show on Instagram and on TikTok, so it's great to have you with us there. But if you just watch the show on either of those platforms and you don't follow us on Spotify, Substack, Apple Podcast, or YouTube, I'm sorry to say this, but you are an asshole. You are an asshole. So please follow us on the one of those platforms. Go and search theignition.news, theignition.news, or just go type into your search bar of any of your favorite platforms, The Ignition News. So, first off, here we go. Economic collapse by design. The president's tariff policies are systemically destroying American businesses, and the numbers don't lie. Corporate bankruptcies just hit a 15-year high in 2025, with at least 717 companies filing for bankruptcy through November alone. My friends, that is a 14% jump from last year, and it is the worst we have seen since the immediate aftermath of the Great Recession of 2010. Are we winning yet? Are we great yet? And it's this is not like a natural economic cycle. This is not just ebbs and flow. This is a policy-driven decision. So here's what's happening. The tariffs have pushed the U.S. tariff rate from 2.5% in January to an estimated 27%. This is the highest level in over a century. These are not targeted or strategic tariff practices. They're just sort of shit thrown on the wall, dressed up as nationalism. And the manufacturing sector in America is getting absolutely crushed right now. Companies that rely on imported parts are absorbing massive cost increase that they can no longer avoid passing on to the customers. Small and medium-sized businesses don't have the buying power of these massive companies, and they're eating these costs until they collapse or go out of business. And what about farmers? Farmers' bankruptcies doubled in 2024. Bankruptcies for farmers doubled, rising 55% after a 4-year decline. Wonder who was president the 4 years it declined. Net farm income dropped to its lowest point in 4 years. The Trump administration's response during his first term was bailouts, taxpayer money going to prop up the damages that his own policies created. Well, here's the reality, though. The Tax Foundation estimates that tariffs are going to amount to an average increase of $1,200 per household. You're paying more, businesses are dying, and farmers aren't making as much money as they were. In the industrial heartland, the communities Trump promised to revive, they're watching their employees file for Chapter 11. July 2025 saw the highest monthly bankruptcy total in 5 years. So you're seeing bankruptcies from company and bankruptcy from consumer alike. The trade practices are pushing up costs, they're disrupting supply chains, and they're fucking with our wallet. And it is ridiculous. Now, this matters because obviously when corporations can no longer control the narrative, when they collapse, real people lose their jobs. Communities lose tax money. When companies go out of business, they don't pay taxes. When employees lose their job, they don't pay taxes. So the streets don't get fixed. The schools don't get funded. It's a cycle of doom. Corporate America right now is hemorrhaging. Small businesses are shuttering and farms are going under. You're not hearing this on mainstream media, which is why you're with us here on the Ignition News. The reality is, this is the worst economic situation that we've seen. And as the Washington Post itself said, the president elected in 2024 was handed off the best economy in the history of the country. Now, here on the Ignition News, we'll be the first to tell you not everyone feels that way. In fact, I don't feel that way. Most of you listening or watching the show right now, you probably don't feel that when Joe Biden left office, you had the best economic conditions that you've ever had in your entire life. But I can tell you one thing. You absolutely don't feel any better today, and you most likely feel considerably worse. Welcome to the Ignition News, everybody. It's night, but we do have some important stories to discuss. And let's transition right into the next story. So you would think that our government, with all these pressing economic concerns, with citizens worried about being able to afford groceries, healthcare, and the ability to, for example, I mean, a lot of people put their Christmas presents on Klarna. Everybody knows that. And honestly, I'm tired of shaming people who do that. It's just the reality of where we are right now. So, with all these economic problems right now, what is the United States government worried about? Well, one thing. Segment 2. Your tax dollars are going to help fund weapons for Israel. Let's talk about where your money is actually going while American businesses collapse. The Pentagon just announced an $8.6 billion contract with Boeing to help build 15 fighter jets for Israel. This came, of course, after Trump just met with Benjamin Netanyahu, known international war criminal. Interesting timing, of course, of that. The contract covers 25 aircraft customized. They got custom F-15s. Good for them. Jesus Christ. With an option for 25 more. That's 50 advanced fighter jets extending through 2035. Boeing's doing the manufacturing in St. Louis, and the whole thing is structured as foreign military aid and sale. Here's the context that matters, of course. The contract was announced while the U.S. has long been Israel's longest arms supplier, and while pro-Palestinian and anti-war protesters nationwide have been demanding an end to military support for Israel due to the devastating genocide and assault on Gaza. Those demands have not only been ignored, yes, by Trump, but also yes, by Biden. Biden gets no skis on this slope at all. No excuses. So while corporate bankruptcies hit 15-year highs, while farmers are losing their livelihoods, while working Americans are getting crushed by debt, inflation, while they're literally financing their grocery stores on credit. And that's the truth, by the way. More Americans are financed. Do you know DoorDash recently announced the ability to pay for your food in 4 monthly payments? On DoorDash? You're DoorDashing. You're doing monthly installments for DoorDash. Meanwhile, we're sending F-15s to Israel? We're cutting an $8.6 billion check, foreign aid, to Israel, while American cities are crumbling. Literally, they're crumbling. We're going to talk about that. This morning on the show, we talked about how Detroit, if you're following the Ignition News, we covered a story no one else is covering, which is that in Detroit, they tore down dilapidated houses, and a bunch of corrupt companies, incidentally linked to the Trump administration, are backfilling those demolitions with toxic dirt. So corrupt companies are filling in infrastructure with toxic dirt that is unsafe to live in, and we're sending shiny F-15s to Israel, who has what? Subsidized universal healthcare, subsidized education, college, safety, security, community aid, paid for by you while your community struggles. This is about priorities, my friends. It's about who gets resources and who gets left behind. And this is very clear. The Trump administration is telling us exactly what they believe is the most important thing. And when you struggle tonight, you know what they said in Mar-a-Lago? They said Israel matters more than you. Let's move on. Segment number 3. Speaking of Donald Trump, here's a story that should kind of, make you a little bit scared about who actually controls the United States of America, who actually has power. Marjorie Taylor Greene just went public with a very explosive conversation about why the president has opposed releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files. According to Marjorie Taylor Greene, in their last phone conversation, which happened after she threatened to expose the men in the Epstein files, Trump, the president, called her and yelled at her. The whole office could hear him screaming through the speakerphone. When Greene pushed back and asked why he was blocking transparency around Epstein's criminal network, Trump's response was chilling. He said, "My friends will get hurt," not "we need to protect the victims," or "there are legal concerns," or "Pam Bondi's looking through all this stuff." He said, "My friends will get hurt." Marjorie Taylor Greene also said that the president tried to invite Epstein survivors to the office, or she asked him to invite Epstein survivors to the Oval Office. And what did the president say? The president of the United States of America told ostracized Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene that survivors of the Epstein trauma did not earn the honor of going to the White House. Let that sink in. The president of the United States, 427 of 428 Republican and Democratic congresswomen and men voted to release the Epstein files. The Senate approved it unanimously. This shit is coming out one way or the other, whether it's internet detectives with redactions or whether it is leaks. This is coming out. The president of the United States is more concerned about protecting powerful men connected to a sex trafficking operation than he is concerned about protecting the victims and providing justice to the survivors. It's easy enough to say, oh, this is how power protects power, but the handling of this has been probably one of the most incompetent exercises of power in the history of the United States. And let me tell you, if you're frustrated about this, I want to let you know that even the Republicans, even the MAGA base, is deeply disappointed in how this is all going. But that one little pass, people ask me, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this Ignition News? Well, because if you turn on CBS tonight, certainly, Bari, or if you turn on MSNBC, or if you turn on Fox News, you're not going to hear that the president of the United States said that Epstein survivors don't get to come to the White House because they didn't earn it. But we're not going to hide that. Not at all. And it has real consequences. Let's get on to segment number 4, everybody. Welcome to the Ignition News. If you're new to the show tonight, go ahead and follow us on Spotify or find us in Substack or go ahead and click subscribe on YouTube. It's important that you get unfiltered news about what's happening in this country. The consequence of what's happening because of this and because of the policy failures of the administration are very clear. And it's Gen Z. Gen Z's not buying it. Something that Republicans should really worry about is a recent poll. Here's what we learned. Polling for Gen Z reveals that male Gen Z voters are breaking with Trump and the Republican Party less than 1 year after basically winning the election for him. His approval with 18 to 29-year-olds is sitting at 32%. By the way, that is lower than the last time we talked about this. Young men now prefer Democratic control of Congress by a 12-point margin. The Yale Youth Poll found that voters overwhelmingly disapprove of Trump's job performance. And then when you include millennials, nobody ever includes millennials, let's be honest. Nearly 60% disapprove of the president's performance. Neither party can claim a higher than 1/3 approval rating with Gen Z, by the way. So, I mean, that's kind of disastrous because obviously, even the Democrats at this time of great disdain and frustration and failure, they can't even get above 1/3 in the polls. It's pretty crazy. Gen Z and millennials are estimated to make up half of eligible voters for the 2026 midterms. If Republicans thought 2024 was their breakthrough, well, that check has been cashed and it comes back insufficient funds. Research does show, by the way, that voters are most impressionable and ideologically malleable in their early teens and their early 20s. And I know people say, let's talk about good news. As much as we have been through as a country, I think it's very good. Everyone likes to deride Gen Z. Everyone likes to talk shit about Gen Z, especially Gen Z males. I think it is a very good thing long term that they voted this thing in, this orange failure, and then they saw the travesty of all of this. They saw the abject failures of this administration. I think that is going to be very impressionable, especially on these young men exiting college, if they're fortunate enough to go to college, finding themselves unable to get a job. We might have thought that we were ceding the entire Gen Z to the Republican Party. What might have happened is they had it delivered to them on a silver platter and they took a shit on it. That's what it's looking like to me. So I'll take some good news in that, by the way. Let's move on to segment number 5. Who actually runs Congress? Great question. Let's talk about power. Mike Johnson is fighting to keep his position. There's a lot of drama happening within the Republican Party as an example. Here's what we just watched happen, by the way. Mike Johnson negotiated a bipartisan funding deal to avoid a government shutdown. Then Trump and Musk killed that package, not through debate, but through social media. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing, again, Marjorie Taylor Greene pulling a power move as she exits Congress. We saw this exact pattern happen in December, but Marjorie Taylor Greene has basically said Mike Johnson is not a speaker and that he ceded all of his power. And Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire, is now so embedded in the process that there were serious suggestions that Elon Musk, could be made Speaker of the House. That's wild. So Mike Johnson's speakership is literally hanging by a thread because really the president could turn on him at any moment. That is not how the founders designed our system. A duly elected Speaker of the House in a tripartite government should be unafraid to speak up against the president. Well, Mike Johnson is not that man. Let's close it out with our final story, by the way, and get back to our show, Rebel Radio. I do want to just mention that our show, Ignition, the Ignition News, is brought to you by our signature podcast, Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. Ignite is your field guide to fighting fascism in your local community. Yes, people tell you to call your congressperson. Yes, people tell you to write letters to the president, but nobody tells you how to get in on the ground, how to fix the pothole, how to get your school board, how to make sure that books aren't getting banned. That's exactly what we teach you on Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. So go check it out on all of your favorite podcast platforms. And let's get to the final story of the night. And this is a massive victory. Let's talk about resistance. More performers are now pulling out of the Kennedy Center after Trump's board refused to rename it, or actually voted to rename it the Trump Kennedy Center. So we talked about early on an earlier episode of the show this week that a bunch of artists had been pulling their shows at the Kennedy Center. We're going to call it the Kennedy Center on the Ignition News. We're not calling it the TKC. That's not happening. So now, jazz supergroup The Cookers canceled 2 New Year's Eve shows. A folk singer, Christy Lee, pulled her January performance saying, "When American history starts getting treated like something you can ban, erase, rename, or rebrand, I can't stand on that stage and sleep at night." This follows, of course, Chuck Red, who we talked about on actually our first show of The Ignition, who canceled his performance, his annual Christmas Eve concert. When Red canceled, the Kennedy Center said that this was a political stunt. Well, it looks like a bunch of people are pulling political stunts now. So what's happening is these artists are sacrificing their literal income in order to make these statements. They're canceling their shows and they're making a statement. We've asked people to stand up, to step up, and to make a difference. Now these people are putting their lives, their reputation, and their money on the line to do this. This, of course, the president announced with all the things that are happening in the country right now, the president is concerned about making marble armrests at the Kennedy Center. That's what your president is focusing on right now. He, of course, installed the board with a bunch of loyalists who just basically do anything that he asks them to do, and then he slapped his name on the building. Well, guess what? Just like everything else this president touches, it's going to shit. The Kennedy Center, artists are refusing to perform. People are refusing to buy tickets. And it's turned out just like everything else that this president has touched, an abject, absolute, and total failure. But the lesson there tonight is what we talk about often. Resistance shows up in a million different places, spaces, and a million different ways. So we have corporate America collapsing under tariffs. We have the president protecting his friends from the Epstein release. We have Gen Z voters abandoning the Republican Party in real time. We have Congress and the Speaker of the House basically as a not even basically, factually as a rubber stamp to the president. And then we have brave men and women in the artistic community saying enough. We're standing up even though we know it's going to come at a great cost. So that's the state of things. This is what we're dealing with, friends. The question is not, is this bad? The question is, what are we going to do about it? And so let's close it out. You need to stay informed, you need to stay engaged, and you need to stay educated. Resistance starts with being aware of what is happening around us. It's been your very late night show of The Ignition. Thank you very much for listening, for watching on TikTok, Instagram, and for following the show. If you're looking to find, where do I find the Ignition News, this news broadcast? I can't stay up till 10 o'clock and watch the show every night. Well, I would love it if you didn't do that. So go ahead and find us on theignition.news, where you will find our distribution for Spotify, Apple, Substack, all the cool places where all the cats are. Thank you for listening to this episode, this late night, December 29th of The Ignition News. We'll see you on the other side, and we'll see you back on December 30th.